Jake Morrison never thought his boring job as a maintenance engineer on Station Gamma 7 would lead to anything exciting. The space station floated quietly at the edge of human territory, doing routine scans of nearby star systems. Jake spent his days fixing broken air recyclers and checking fuel lines. It was not the adventure he had dreamed of when he signed up for space duty. The station housed about 200 people. Most were scientists, military officers, or important diplomats. Jake was just the guy who made sure the toilets worked and the lights stayed on. He had grown up on a small farming planet where his family fixed tractors and irrigation systems. Space stations were not that different, really. Just more complicated plumbing floating in the void. On the morning that changed everything, Jake was crawling through a maintenance tunnel behind the main communications array. The tunnel was barely wide enough for his shoulders, and every surface was covered in cables and pipes. His portable scanner kept beeping warnings about radiation levels, but they were still within safe limits. Barely. Control. This is Morrison, he spoke into his headset. I found a problem with a long-range transmitter. Someone installed the wrong coupling here. Probably been slowly degrading signal strength for months. Copy that, Morrison. How long to fix? Jake examined the twisted metal connector that had somehow worked its way loose. The threading was completely wrong for this type of junction. Give me 20 minutes. I need to go back to storage and get the right parts. He was backing out of the tunnel when the station's emergency alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed everywhere, and the automated voice began its urgent announcement. Unknown vessels approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Jake's heart jumped. In 3 years on Gamma 7, they had never had a real emergency. Pirates occasionally prowled the shipping lanes, but they avoided military stations. The nearest alien civilization was supposed to be hundreds of light years away. He scrambled out of the maintenance tunnel and ran toward the nearest observation deck. The corridor filled with people moving quickly, but not panicking. Station Commander Reeves had trained everyone well. Through the large windows, Jake could see them. Ships. Hundreds of ships. They were unlike anything in human databases. The vessels looked organic, like giant sea creatures that had learned to swim through space instead of water. Their hulls curved and flowed in ways that seemed impossible to build. Some were the size of shuttles, others dwarfed human battleships. They moved in perfect formation, approaching slowly but steadily. Commander Reeves's voice echoed through the station speakers. All hands, remain calm. We are attempting to establish communication with the unknown fleet. Military personnel to combat stations as a precaution. Civilian staff should move to secure areas and await further instructions. Jake realized he should probably head to one of the emergency shelters, but his curiosity won. He made his way to the main command center. As a senior maintenance engineer, he had access to most areas of the station. The command center buzzed with activity as officers worked at their stations. Any response to our signals? Commander Reeves asked. Nothing yet, sir, replied Communications Officer Chun. We've tried standard first contact protocols in 12 different languages, mathematical sequences, even simple light patterns. They're just waiting out there. Through the command center's main screen, Jake watched the alien fleet hold position about 50,000 kilometers away. They were clearly advanced enough to build faster-than-light ships and coordinate a massive fleet. The fact they had not immediately attacked was encouraging, but their silence was unnerving. Sir, called out Lieutenant Barnes from the sensor station. I'm detecting some kind of scanning beam from the lead ship. Very sophisticated. It's scanning our entire station, down to individual compartments. Commander Reeves frowned. Can we block it? Negative, sir. The technology is far beyond anything we've encountered. They're learning everything about us. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If these aliens wanted to destroy the station, they could probably do it without breaking formation. Humanity's most advanced warships would be no match for technology that could scan through military-grade shielding like it was made of paper. Suddenly, the alien scanning beam intensified. Jake could actually see it now, a pale blue glow that seemed to pass right through the station's hull. The light swept across the command center, and Jake felt a strange, tingling sensation as it passed over him. Sir, Lieutenant Barnes sounded excited and confused. The scanning pattern just changed. They were doing a general survey, but now Now, they're focusing on something specific. The beam is concentrated on this section of the station. This section, Commander Reeves looked around the command center. What could they want here? The scanning beam pulsed brighter, then suddenly cut off. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the hum of the station's systems. Then, Communications Officer Chen nearly jumped out of her chair. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. Not radio, some kind of direct neural interface signal. It's in perfect English. Put on speakers. A voice filled the command center. It was clearly feminine, with an accent that seemed somehow familiar yet completely alien. The words were precise and formal, like someone reading from an important document. Greetings, humans of Station Gamma 7. We are the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. We have traveled far to reach this place. We request immediate audience with the one called Jake Morrison. This matter is of highest importance to our empire. The command center fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at Jake, who stood frozen near the back of the room. His mind raced, trying to understand how aliens he had never seen before could possibly know his name. Commander Reeves recovered first. Morrison, front and center. Now, Jake walked forward on unsteady legs. Sir, I have no idea how they know me. I've never seen those ships before in my life. I'm just a maintenance engineer. Well, apparently you're more than that to them. Commander Reeves activated the communication system. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Reeves of Station Gamma 7. We have Jake Morrison here. What exactly do you want with him? The alien voice responded immediately. Commander Reeves, we appreciate your cooperation. We must speak with Jake Morrison directly. The matter concerns ancient obligations and debts of honor that span generations. Please prepare a suitable meeting space. Representatives of the Empress herself will come aboard your station. The Empress? Officer Chen whispered. Commander Reeves held up a hand for silence. Unknown vessel. Before we agree to any meeting, we need to know more about your intentions. How do you know Morrison? What are these ancient obligations you mentioned? There was a pause. When the voice returned, it carried a tone of great respect and something that might have been wonder. Jake Morrison carries the genetic markers of the Morrison bloodline of Earth. His ancestor, David Morrison, saved the life of our Empress's ancestor 300 years ago when our first ships were lost and dying in the void between stars. The debt of the Zephyrian Empire to the Morrison family has never been repaid. We have searched for 3 centuries to find survivors of this noble line. Jake felt his knees go weak. His great-great-grandfather, David Morrison, had been a space explorer in the early days of human expansion. Family stories said he had disappeared during a deep space mission, never to be seen again. Jake had always assumed those old tales were just family legends. Morrison, Commander Reeves turned to him. Did you know about any of this? No, sir. I mean, yes, there are family stories about my ancestor exploring space, but nothing about aliens. I thought they were just stories. The alien voice continued. Jake Morrison, will you grant us the honor of a meeting? The Empress herself waits in the flagship to personally thank the descendant of our empire's greatest friend. Commander Reeves looked at Jake, then at his staff. Everyone waited for his decision. First contact with an alien civilization was supposed to involve diplomats and scientists, not maintenance engineers. But these aliens had specifically asked for Jake, and they commanded a fleet that could probably destroy the station without effort. All right, Commander Reeves said finally. We'll arrange a meeting, but it will be in our main hangar bay with full security protocols. And Morrison won't be going anywhere alone. We understand your caution, Commander. 3 of our representatives will come aboard your station. They will be unarmed and will follow your security procedures. We only ask that Jake Morrison be present to receive the gratitude of our people. Within an hour, the station's main hangar bay had been converted into a meeting space. Security officers positioned themselves around the room, their weapons ready, but not openly threatening. Medical teams stood by in case the aliens carried unknown diseases. Jake had been given a clean uniform and a quick briefing on first contact protocols, though everyone admitted they were making things up as they went along. Jake stood near the center of the hangar, trying not to let his nervousness show. Commander Reeves stood beside him, along with the station's senior diplomatic officer, Dr. Williams. The hangar doors were sealed and pressurized for the alien arrival. A small ship detached from the alien fleet and approached the station. It was the size of a human shuttle, but moved with fluid grace that defied physics as Jake understood it. The ship's hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and it made no sound as it settled onto the hangar deck. A section of a ship's hull simply dissolved away, creating an opening. 3 figures emerged, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. They were humanoid, but clearly not human. Tall and elegant, with skin that had a faint blue-silver tint, and large eyes that seemed to hold starlight. Their clothing appeared to be made from the same flowing material as their ship. The central figure wore what could only be described as royal robes, decorated with patterns that seemed to move and shift in the light. The 3 aliens approached Jake directly, ignoring everyone else in the hangar. When they were about 10 feet away, they stopped. The central figure, clearly the leader, stepped forward and did something that made Jake's world tilt sideways. She dropped to one knee and bowed her head. The other 2 aliens immediately followed suit. The hangar fell completely silent except for the hum of life support systems. Jake stood frozen, not understanding what was happening or how he should respond. The lead alien raised her head but remained kneeling. When she spoke, her voice carried the same accent as the radio transmission, but also contained emotions Jake could recognize: respect, gratitude, and something deeper. Jake Morrison, descendant of David Morrison the Savior. I am Lysara, first voice of the Empress. In the name of Her Imperial Majesty Zerthel VII, ruler of the Zephyrian Star Empire, I offer the eternal gratitude of our people and request permission to finally repay the debt we have carried for 300 years. Jake looked helplessly at Commander Reeves, who appeared just as confused as he felt. Dr. Williams stepped forward and cleared her throat. We appreciate this gesture of respect, but perhaps you could help us understand the historical context you're referring to? We have no records of contact between humans and your people. Lysara rose gracefully to her feet, but her expression remained respectful as she looked at Jake. Of course, the story is sacred to our people. 300 years ago, a fleet of our ships became lost in the void between galaxies. Our navigation systems had failed, our fuel was depleted, and our people were dying. We had given up hope when a small human vessel appeared. She paused, and her large eyes seemed to shine brighter. The human captain could have simply recorded our location and continued on his mission. Instead, David Morrison risked his own life to rescue over 50,000 Zephyrian souls. He shared his ship's resources, helped repair our navigation systems, and guided our fleet to safety. When we offered him rewards, territories, even a position in our empire, he refused everything. He said helping people was simply what humans did. Jake felt a strange pride mixing with his confusion. The family stories had never mentioned aliens, but they had always emphasized David Morrison's courage and kindness. Our Empress swore a sacred oath that day, Lysara continued. The Morrison bloodline would forever be honored among our people. We would search the galaxy until we found David Morrison's descendants, and we would repay the debt. It has taken us 3 centuries, but we have finally found you. She gestured toward Jake with deep reverence. You are the last known survivor of the Morrison family line. Our Empress has waited her entire reign for this moment. Commander Reeves found his voice. This is all very interesting, but what exactly does this debt repayment involve? Lysara smiled, and Jake realized that despite their alien features, her expressions were remarkably human. Jake Morrison, by right of blood and sacred debt, the Zephyrian Empire offers you a choice. You may claim territory, titles, wealth beyond imagination, or, she paused dramatically, you may claim something far more valuable. Which is? Jake managed to ask. Alliance. The Zephyrian Empire formally requests alliance with humanity, with you as our primary liaison. Your people will gain access to our technology, our star charts, our protection. In return, we ask only for friendship and the chance to finally honor David Morrison's legacy. Jake's mind reeled. An alliance with an advanced alien civilization was exactly the kind of breakthrough humanity had hoped for. But the fact that it all hinged on his family history seemed impossible. I need to think about this, Jake said. This is all happening very fast. Lysara nodded understandingly. Of course. Such decisions cannot be rushed. But please know that our Empress waits eagerly to meet you in person. She has studied the historical records of your ancestors' heroism her entire life. You are, quite literally, the answer to her prayers. As if on cue, the hangar's communication system activated. Commander Reeves listened to his earpiece, then looked up with an expression of amazement. Morrison, you're not going to believe this. We're receiving messages from Earth Command, Mars Colony, and the Jupiter Mining Consortium. Word has somehow spread that we've made contact with an advanced alien civilization. Everyone wants to know what's happening here. Jake looked around the hangar at the aliens who had traveled across the galaxy to find him, at the human officers who were struggling to understand the situation, and at the vast fleet of ships waiting outside. Somehow, a simple maintenance engineer from a farming planet had become the most important human in the galaxy. He took a deep breath and looked directly at Lysura. I'll meet with your Empress, but I want my commander and Dr. Williams present for any formal negotiations. And I want to learn everything about what my ancestor really did. Lysura's smile could have lit up the entire hangar. Jake Morrison, you honor us with your acceptance. The Empress will be overjoyed. Shall we arrange transport to the flagship? Transport. Jake felt his stomach drop. You mean leave the station? Only if you're comfortable with it. The Empress could come here, but our flagship has facilities better suited for the formal ceremony she has planned. You would, of course, be perfectly safe. You are the most honored guest in the history of our empire. Commander Reeves stepped forward. What kind of ceremony are we talking about? Lysura looked slightly embarrassed. The Empress has spent decades planning for this moment. There will be formal presentations, historical reenactments of David Morrison's heroism, cultural exchanges, and, she hesitated, the offering of the Imperial Crown jewels as initial payment of our debt. Jake nearly choked. Crown jewels? It is traditional. Though I suspect you will be more interested in the star charts and technology transfers the Empress also plans to offer. Dr. Williams leaned over to Commander Reeves and whispered urgently. Jake caught fragments. Unprecedented opportunity. Could advance human civilization by centuries. But we need to be careful. Commander Reeves nodded and turned back to Lysura. We'll need some time to prepare. Can we meet aboard the flagship tomorrow? Of course. The Empress has waited 300 years. She can wait one more day. Lysura bowed again to Jake. Until tomorrow, Jake Morrison. May the stars shine favorably upon you. As the three aliens returned to their ship and departed, Jake slumped against a nearby crate. The hangar slowly returned to normal activity, but everyone kept glancing at him with new respect and curiosity. Commander Reeves put a hand on Jake's shoulder. Well, Morrison, it looks like your maintenance duties are on hold indefinitely. You've got an alien empire to deal with. Jake looked out at the vast alien fleet through the hangar's windows. Somewhere out there, an Empress waited to meet him because of something his ancestor had done 3 centuries ago. The simple life he had always known was over, and he had no idea what would replace it. But for the first time in years, Jake Morrison felt like he was about to be part of something truly important. Jake Morrison barely slept that night. His small quarters on Station Gamma 7 felt different now, like a launching pad rather than a home. Every few minutes, he found himself staring out his small window at the alien fleet. The ships had arranged themselves in what looked like a ceremonial formation, with the largest vessel at the center. Somewhere aboard that flagship, an alien Empress was preparing to meet him. Dr. Williams had spent hours briefing Jake on diplomatic protocols, but most of it felt useless. How do you prepare to meet the ruler of an interstellar empire when you have never even met a human politician? Jake's biggest concern the day before had been fixing a broken water recycler. Now he was supposed to represent all of humanity in negotiations that could change the course of galactic civilization. Commander Reeves knocked on Jake's door at 0800 hours. Ready for this, Morrison? No, sir. But I guess that does not matter. Walk with me. They headed toward the hangar bay, passing crew members who all seemed to find excuses to see Jake. Word had spread quickly through the station. The maintenance engineer was now the most famous human in known space. I've been thinking all night, Commander Reeves said as they walked. These Zephyrians have technology far beyond ours. Their scanning systems, their ship design, even their translation abilities are centuries ahead of human science. If they wanted to conquer us, they could do it without breaking a sweat. Jake nodded. So why have not they? That is what makes me think they are telling the truth about your ancestor. Look at their behavior. They did not arrive with weapons blazing or demand for surrender. They specifically asked for you by name. They show respect for our protocols. This does not feel like the behavior of conquerors. They reached the hangar bay, where Dr. Williams waited with a small team of specialists. The diplomatic officer looked nervous but excited. Behind her stood Lieutenant Sean, who would serve as communications officer, and Dr. Martinez from the medical team. Morrison, Dr. Williams said, I have been studying what little information we have about the Zephyrian Empire. Based on their ship designs and organizational structure, they appear to have a highly advanced but traditional monarchy. Protocol will be extremely important to them. What kind of protocol? Show respect for their Empress. Let her speak first in any formal setting. Accept gifts graciously, even if they seem excessive. And remember that you are not just representing yourself. You are representing your family bloodline, which apparently has a special meaning to them. A ship approached from the alien fleet. This one was larger than the shuttle that had brought Lysara the day before. It looked more like a small warship, but its hull had the same flowing, organic appearance as all Zephyrian vessels. The ship settled onto the hangar deck with complete silence. Lysara emerged first, followed by two new aliens. These were different robes, more military in style, with what looked like ceremonial armor underneath. Their movements were crisp and formal. Jake Morrison, Lysara approached with her characteristic bow. I present Captain Veltar and Commander Eric's of the Imperial Guard. They will escort us to the flagship for your audience with Her Imperial Majesty. Captain Veltar stepped forward. He was taller than Lysara, with more pronounced alien features and skin that had a metallic sheen. When he spoke, his voice carried authority that reminded Jake of Commander Reeves. Jake Morrison, it is our honor to provide transport and security for this historic occasion. Your safety is our highest priority. The Empress has ordered that you be treated with all the respect due to an Imperial hero. Imperial hero? Jake looked at Lysara for explanation. It is the highest civilian honor in our empire, she explained. David Morrison was posthumously granted this title 50 years ago, when our historians finished documenting his heroic actions. By blood right, the title passes to you. Commander Reeves stepped forward. Captain Veltar, what security arrangements have been made? We are trusting you with some of our most valuable people. Understood, Commander. Your people will have complete freedom of movement aboard our flagship. Any area accessible to Imperial citizens is accessible to your delegation. We have prepared quarters in a human style, should your meeting extend beyond one day. And, of course, you may return to your station at any time you wish. Dr. Williams nodded approvingly. The aliens were addressing human concerns about safety and autonomy without being asked. It was either very good diplomacy or genuine respect. All right, Commander Reeves said. Morrison, you are authorized to proceed with this meeting. Remember that anything you agree to will need approval from Earth Command, but you are our official representative for initial negotiations. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a heavy coat. Understood, sir. The boarding process was surprisingly simple. The Zephyrian ship's interior was as elegant as its exterior suggested. The walls seemed to be made from the same flowing material as the hull, but they provided perfect lighting without any visible light sources. The floor felt solid but had a slight give to it like walking on grass. Captain Veltar led them to a passenger compartment that had been modified for human physiology. The chairs were the right height and shape, the air had the proper oxygen mixture, and the temperature was comfortable. Someone had put considerable thought into making humans feel welcome. The journey to our flagship will take approximately 20 minutes, Lysara explained as the ship lifted off. During that time, I can brief you on Empress Zarathel and the ceremony she has planned. Through the ship's transparent walls, Jake watched Station Gamma 7 fall away below them. The alien fleet surrounded them as they flew toward the massive flagship at the formation center. Up close, the largest ship was even more impressive. It had to be at least 5 kilometers long, with flowing lines that made it look like a living creature swimming through space. Our Empress is young by Zephyrian standards, Lysara began. She has ruled for only 30 Earth years, but she has studied the story of David Morrison since childhood. Her great-grandmother was among the people your ancestors saved. For Zarathel, meeting you represents the fulfillment of a sacred promise made by her predecessors. Dr. Williams leaned forward. What can you tell us about Zephyrian culture? What should we expect? We value honor above all else, Captain Veltar answered. Debts must be repaid. Promises must be kept. Your ancestors' act of selfless heroism created a debt that has defined our empire's relationship with humanity for 3 centuries. But we did not know you existed, Jake pointed out. Which is precisely why David Morrison's actions were so remarkable, Lysara smiled. He helped us without any expectation of reward or recognition. Such pure altruism is rare in the galaxy. The flagship loomed ahead of them. As they approached, Jake could see details of its construction that defied human engineering. The hull seemed to be grown rather than built, with no visible seams or joints. Massive ports opened to receive their small ship, closing seamlessly behind them once they were inside. The hangar bay they entered was enormous. Hundreds of Zephyrian ships of various sizes filled the space, but everything was organized with military precision. As their ships settled onto a landing platform, Jake noticed that other aliens had gathered to watch their arrival. Word of the human delegation's visit had clearly spread throughout the ship. Jake Morrison, Lysara said as they prepared to disembark. You should know that many of our people have never seen a human before. You're quite literally living history to them. They were met by an honor guard of 12 Zephyrian soldiers. Their armor was functional but beautiful, decorated with symbols that seemed to move and shift in the light. The guard's leader, a female alien with intricate tattoos covering her visible skin, approached Jake directly. Jake Morrison, I am Commander Syra of the Imperial Honor Guard. It is my privilege to escort you to Her Imperial Majesty. Please follow me. The walk through the flagship was a revelation. The corridors were wide enough for dozens of people to walk side by side, with high ceilings that gave everything a cathedral-like feeling. The walls were decorated with what appeared to be living art, patterns of light and color that flowed and changed as they passed. Other aliens stopped whatever they were doing to watch Jake walk by. Many bowed their heads in respect. This is incredible, Dr. Williams whispered to Jake. Their technology is so advanced it looks like magic. They passed through several different sections of the ship. Jake saw what looked like gardens growing in zero gravity, workshops where aliens crafted objects from materials that shifted between solid and liquid states, and viewing areas where the walls were completely transparent, offering stunning views of space and the surrounding fleet. Finally, they arrived at a massive set of doors that reached from floor to ceiling. The doors were covered in carvings that told some kind of story, with figures that looked suspiciously like humans working alongside Zephyrians. Commander Syra spoke a few words in her own language, and the doors swung open silently. The throne room beyond was breathtaking. The chamber was circular, with a dome ceiling that showed real-time images of the space around them. It felt like standing inside a transparent sphere floating among the stars. Hundreds of Zephyrians lined the walls, all wearing formal robes that indicated high rank or important positions. At the far end of the chamber, a throne rose from what appeared to be flowing water. The throne itself looked organic, as if it had grown from crystal and metal. Sitting on the throne was the most striking alien Jake had ever seen. Empress Zarathel was tall and elegant, with the same blue-silver skin as other Zephyrians, but marked with intricate golden patterns that seemed to move slowly across her features. Her robes were white and gold, flowing around her like captured starlight. Her eyes were larger than those of other Zephyrians, and they seemed to hold depths of wisdom and experience far beyond her apparent age. But what struck Jake most was her expression as she saw him. The powerful ruler of an interstellar empire looked at him with something approaching wonder, as if she were seeing a mythical creature come to life. Commander Syra led the human delegation to the center of the chamber and stopped about 20 feet from the throne. The entire room fell silent, except for the soft sound of flowing water around the throne's base. Empress Zarathel rose from her throne and stepped down toward them. As she approached, her expression never changed. When she was about 10 feet away, she stopped and looked directly at Jake. Then, to the visible shock of every Zephyrian in the chamber, the Empress of the Zephyrian Star Empire slowly dropped to one knee and bowed her head. Jake Morrison, descendant of David Morrison the Savior, Her voice carried clearly through the chamber. "I am Zurathel, seventh of her line, ruler of the Zephyrian Star Empire. In the name of my people, and in memory of the 50,000 souls your ancestors saved, I offer you the gratitude of our empire and beg your forgiveness for the 3 centuries it has taken us to find you." The silence in the throne room was absolute. Jake looked around desperately, trying to understand what he was supposed to do. Every alien eye in the chamber was focused on him. Dr. Williams gave him a subtle nod, encouraging him to respond. "Your Majesty," Jake said, his voice cracking slightly, "please stand up. You do not need to bow to me. I'm just a maintenance engineer." Empress Zarathel raised her head, but remained kneeling. "Jake Morrison, you are far more than that. You carry the blood of the greatest hero in our history. David Morrison asked for nothing when he saved our people. He expected no reward, no recognition, no repayment. But the Zephyrian Empire never forgets its debts." She stood gracefully and gestured to the aliens lining the chamber walls. "Every family represented here today owes their existence to your ancestor. The children who were saved, the bloodlines that continued, the entire future of our empire, all of it exists because David Morrison chose compassion over convenience." Jake felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was saying. "Your Majesty, I appreciate what you were telling me, but I do not understand why this matters so much to you personally." The Empress smiled, and Jake realized that despite her alien features, her expression was completely human in its warmth and sincerity. "My great-grandmother was 7 years old when your ancestor's ship found our fleet. She was dying of starvation and radiation poisoning. David Morrison personally carried her to his ship's medical bay and stayed with her for 3 days until she recovered." She gestured toward the carvings on the chamber doors. "That little girl grew up to become Empress Zarathel IV. Every ruler of our empire since then has carried the story of David Morrison's kindness. We have searched the galaxy for 3 centuries, hoping to find some way to repay the debt. And now you have found me. Yes, and with your permission, I would like to begin that repayment." The Empress clapped her hands once, and servants appeared carrying what could only be described as treasure chests. The first chest contained crystals that seemed to hold starlight. The second held what looked like technological devices, but their purpose was unclear. The third was filled with star charts showing vast regions of space that human science had never explored. "These are the crown jewels of our empire," Empress Zarathel explained. "But they're nothing compared to what we truly offer you." She gestured again, and a new group of aliens entered the chamber. These wore the robes of scholars and scientists. Their leader, an elderly Zephyrian with skin that had faded to pale silver, carried a data crystal that pulsed with soft light. "Jake Morrison," the Empress continued, "we offer you the complete technological database of our empire. Medical knowledge that could extend human life by centuries. Engineering techniques that could revolutionize space travel. Agricultural methods that could feed billions. All of it freely given in honor of David Morrison's legacy." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Your Majesty, such knowledge would transform human civilization. What do you ask in return?" The Empress looked surprised by the question. "Nothing. This is repayment of a debt, not a trade negotiation. However," she paused and looked directly at Jake, "we do have one hope, which is alliance. Not conquest or domination, but true partnership between our peoples. The Zephyrian Empire controls 12 star systems with over 40 inhabited worlds. We have been alone in this region of the galaxy for millennia. We would welcome the friendship of humanity." Jake felt the weight of the moment. Everything he said here could determine the future relationship between 2 civilizations. "Your Majesty, I am honored by your offer, but I cannot make such decisions alone. I would need to consult with Earth Command and human leadership. Of course, we understand that such matters require careful consideration." The Empress smiled again. "But perhaps, while your leaders deliberate, you would accept our hospitality? We have prepared quarters for your delegation, and our scholars are eager to share stories of David Morrison's heroism with his descendant." Commander Reeves, who had been silent throughout the ceremony, finally spoke up. "Your Majesty, we appreciate your generosity, but Our people will want proof that this technology sharing is genuine and not some kind of trap. Captain Veltar stepped forward before the Empress could respond. Commander Reeves, with respect, if we intended harm to humanity, would we need elaborate deceptions? Our ships could level every human colony without suffering a single casualty. That is exactly why we need to be careful, Reeves replied. Empress Zarathel raised her hand to forestall any further argument. Your caution is understandable and appropriate. Perhaps we can demonstrate our sincerity through small steps. Jake Morrison, would you permit our medical team to examine your genetic structure? We have detailed records of David Morrison's DNA from our first encounter. Confirming your relationship to him would provide verification for both our peoples. Jake looked at Dr. Martinez, who nodded. A simple blood sample would be sufficient for genetic analysis, the human doctor said. Very well, Jake agreed. But I would like Dr. Martinez present for any medical procedures. Of course. The Empress clapped her hands again, and several aliens approached. These wore robes that marked them as medical personnel. Their leader, a female alien with particularly intricate golden markings on her skin, bowed to Jake. Jake Morrison, I am Chief Medical Researcher Kala. With your permission, I would like to take a small blood sample for genetic analysis. Our equipment can compare your DNA to our historical records of David Morrison within minutes. The procedure was remarkably similar to human blood draws. The Zephyr medical equipment looked more advanced, but the basic process was the same. Dr. Martinez watched carefully as Kala extracted a small sample of Jake's blood and fed it into a device that hummed quietly. While they waited for results, Empress Zarathel invited the human delegation to examine the treasure chest she had presented. The crystals in the first chest were apparently power sources that could run a human city for years without recharging. The devices in the second chest included personal shields, universal translators, and medical scanners that could diagnose any disease known to Zephyrian science. The star charts are perhaps the most valuable gift, the Empress explained, pointing to the contents of the third chest. They show safe routes to over 300 systems within 50 light-years of Earth. Some contain habitable worlds. Others have resources that could fuel human expansion for millennia. Dr. Williams examined one of the star charts with obvious excitement. This is incredible. Some of these systems are completely unknown to human science. How long did it take you to map all of this? Approximately 2,000 years, replied one of the Zephyrian scholars. But with our charts, human exploration could cover the same territory in decades rather than centuries. Chief Medical Researcher Kala approached with results from the genetic analysis. Her expression was one of satisfaction and wonder. Your Majesty, the analysis is complete. Jake Morrison is definitively a direct descendant of David Morrison. The genetic markers are unmistakable. A murmur of satisfaction passed through the assembled Zephyrians. Empress Zarathel smiled broadly. Then it is confirmed. Jake Morrison, you are truly the heir to the greatest legacy in Zephyrian history. She turned to address the entire chamber. Let it be recorded that on this day, the sacred debt of the Zephyrian Empire begins to be repaid. Let all our people know that the bloodline of David Morrison has been found and honored. The aliens in the chamber began to chant something in their own language. The words were rhythmic and seemed to build in intensity. Jake could not understand the meaning, but the emotion behind it was unmistakable. These people were celebrating something they had waited 300 years to accomplish. As the chanting died away, Empress Zarathel approached Jake once more. Jake Morrison, you have honored us by accepting our gifts and our explanation. Now I have one more request. What is it, Your Majesty? Stay with us for a few days. Let's show you the full scope of what we offer. Meet our people, learn about our civilization, and see for yourself that our intentions toward humanity are genuine. When you return to your people, you'll be able to speak from first-hand experience about who we are and what we represent. Jake looked at Commander Reeves, who nodded slowly. Morrison, this could be the opportunity of several lifetimes. I think you should accept. All right, Jake agreed. We will stay for a few days, but I'll maintain regular communication with Station Gamma 7 and with Earth Command. Of course, you will have unlimited access to our communication systems. The Empress gestured toward the chamber doors. Now, Let's show you to your quarters. Tomorrow, we begin the real education about what alliance with the Zephyrian Empire could mean for humanity. As they left the throne room, Jake caught glimpses of aliens throughout the ship, stopping their activities to watch him pass. Some bowed, others simply stared in wonder. All of them seemed to regard him as something special, something important. For a maintenance engineer from a farming planet, it was almost too much to process. But as Jake walked through the magnificent alien ship, surrounded by technology that could transform human civilization, he began to understand that his simple life was truly over. Whatever happened next, he was no longer just Jake Morrison, the maintenance engineer. He was Jake Morrison, descendant of heroes, representative of humanity, and possibly the key to humanity's greatest alliance. The only question now was whether he could live up to such massive expectations. Jake Morrison woke up in the most comfortable bed he had ever experienced. The Zephyrian quarters designed for the human delegation were a perfect blend of alien technology and human comfort. The bed seemed to adjust automatically to his body temperature and preferred sleeping position. The walls showed gentle images of Earth landscapes. Somehow the aliens had accessed human databases and created a familiar environment. A soft chime indicated someone was requesting entry to his quarters. Jake pulled on the human-style clothes that had been provided and opened the door to find Lysara waiting in the corridor. "Good morning, Jake Morrison. I trust you slept well." "Better than I have in years," Jake admitted. "How do your beds do that adjusting thing?" Lysara smiled. "The sleeping surface contains billions of microscopic robots that monitor your vital signs and adjust density, temperature, and support accordingly. We can teach human engineers to build them, if you're interested." Jake paused while putting on his shoes. The casual way she offered to share advanced technology still amazed him. "Lysara, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Yesterday, your Empress knelt before me." Everyone in that throne room looked shocked. Was that unusual? Lysara's expression became serious. "Jake Morrison, in the 3,000-year history of the Zephyrian Empire, no ruler has ever knelt before anyone. The Empress bowing to you was unprecedented. It sent a message to every noble family and military commander in our empire." "What kind of message?" "That your family line hold a position above even royalty. That the debt to David Morrison is so sacred that normal protocols of rank and station do not apply." Lysara paused. "Some of our nobles are concerned about the implications." Jake felt a chill. "What kind of concerns?" "Nothing that threatens you personally," Lysara said quickly. "But some question whether it is wise to elevate any bloodline, even yours, above the imperial throne. They worry about setting precedents that could destabilize traditional power structures." "Great. So I'm causing political problems just by existing." "You are creating opportunities for political change," Lysara corrected. "The Empress believes our empire has become too rigid, too focused on tradition at the expense of progress. Your arrival provides justification for reforms she has wanted to implement for years." They walked through the ship's corridors toward the main briefing room where the day's activities would begin. Jake noticed that fewer aliens stopped to stare at him this morning. Word of his presence had spread, and the novelty was wearing off. That was fine with him. The briefing room contained the human delegation along with several Zephyrian officials. Commander Reeves looked up as Jake entered. "Morrison, we have been getting some interesting reports from Earth Command. News of our contact with the Zephyrians has reached the core worlds. There are emergency sessions of Parliament, the Colonial Council, and the Military Command Authority. Everyone wants to know what is happening out here." Dr. Williams added, "We have also been analyzing the technology samples the Empress provided yesterday. Our preliminary assessment is that they are genuine and functional. The power crystals alone could revolutionize human energy production." Jake took a seat at the conference table. "What does Earth Command want us to do?" "Learn everything we can," Commander Reeves replied. "They have given us authority to negotiate preliminary agreements, subject to ratification by proper authorities. Basically, we're to find out what the Zephyrians really want and whether we can trust them." Captain Veltar entered the room with several other Zephyrian officers. "Good morning. Her Imperial Majesty has planned a series of presentations for your delegation today. You will tour our agricultural facilities, manufacturing centers, and military installations. The goal is to provide complete transparency about our capabilities and intentions. Military installations? Commander Reeves looked interested. You are willing to show us your weapons systems? Everything, Captain Veltar confirmed. The Empress believes that true alliance requires complete trust. You will see exactly how powerful our military is, and why we have no need to conquer or dominate humanity. The first stop was the ship's agricultural center. Jake had expected something like the hydroponic gardens on human stations, but what he found was completely different. The Zephyrians had created entire ecosystems in massive chambers throughout their ship. Artificial suns provided perfect lighting, while weather control systems created rain, wind, and seasonal changes. This single ship produces enough food to feed 1 million people, explained Agricultural Coordinator Thane as he led them through forests and fields that seemed impossible to exist inside a spacecraft. Our bioengineering techniques allow us to grow crops that are nutritionally superior to natural varieties and require minimal resources. Dr. Williams examined plants that looked familiar but wrong, like earth vegetables that had been perfected. How long did it take you to develop this technology? About 500 years of experimentation and refinement. But we can teach human scientists the basic principles in a few months. Your people could eliminate hunger throughout your colonies within a decade. They moved on to manufacturing centers where Jake watched machines that seemed to think for themselves. Raw materials flowed in one end of the facility while finished products emerged from the other. There were no visible workers, just automated systems that operated with perfect efficiency. Our manufacturing is completely automated, explained Chief Engineer Corvex. Artificial intelligence systems handle all production, from basic components to complex starships. We have not needed traditional labor for industrial production in over 1,000 years. What do your people do then? Jake asked. Art, science, exploration, philosophy. We pursue knowledge and beauty rather than struggling for basic survival. It is a freedom your people could share. The military installations were the most impressive stop. Captain Veltar led them through weapons testing areas where Zephyrians demonstrated technology that made human military equipment look primitive. Energy weapons that could vaporize asteroids, shields that could deflect any known projectile, and engines that could accelerate ships to velocities that should have been impossible. Our fleet contains 12,000 warships of various classes, Captain Veltar explained as they watched test firings from a safe observation deck. Each ship carries enough firepower to destroy a planet. The flagship you are aboard now could eliminate your entire human fleet without taking damage. Commander Reeves watched the demonstrations with obvious concern. Captain, I appreciate your honesty, but this is not exactly reassuring from a military perspective. I understand your concern, but consider our behavior. If we intended to conquer humanity, would we be showing you our weapons? Would we be teaching you how to build defenses against them? Captain Veltar gestured toward the test range. We are demonstrating our power precisely to show that we do not need to use it against you. The tours continued through the afternoon. Jake saw medical facilities that could regrow entire organs, educational systems that could download knowledge directly into students' minds, and entertainment centers that created completely immersive virtual realities. Every aspect of Zephyrian civilization was centuries beyond human achievement. During a break between presentations, Jake found himself alone on an observation deck looking out at the stars. The view was spectacular, but he felt overwhelmed by everything he had seen. Dr. Williams joined him after a few minutes. Incredible, is not it? She said, settling into a chair beside him. Overwhelming. They're offering to share all of this with humanity, and I cannot figure out why. What do they really get out of it? Maybe exactly what they say. The fulfillment of a 300-year-old promise. Dr. Williams paused. Jake, I have been studying their behavior patterns, their social interactions, their responses to our questions. Everything suggests they're telling the truth about their motivations. But I keep thinking about what Lysara said this morning, about political concerns among Zephyrian nobles. What happens to this alliance if the Empress loses support from her own people? Before Jake could answer, Lysara approached from the corridor. Jake Morrison, Her Imperial Majesty requests your presence in her private chambers. She wishes to share something personal with you. Jake followed Lasara through parts of the ship he had not seen before. These corridors were more intimate, decorated with art and personal touches that reflected the Empress's tastes. They passed through several security checkpoints where guards snapped to attention at Jake's approach. The Empress's private chambers were surprisingly modest considering her position. The rooms were comfortable and elegant, but not ostentatious. Empress Zarathel waited in what appeared to be a study, surrounded by books and artifacts from across her empire. Jake Morrison, thank you for coming. Please sit with me. She gestured to comfortable chairs near a window that showed the stars outside. I wanted to speak with you privately about something that has troubled me for years. Jake settled into the offered chair. What is it, Your Majesty? The burden of the debt we owe your family. The Empress's expression was serious. For 3 centuries, every ruler of our empire has carried the weight of this unpaid obligation. It has influenced our policies, our exploration priorities, even our social development. How so? We have searched constantly for humans, for any sign of David Morrison's descendants. Entire fleets have been devoted to exploration beyond our normal territories. Resources that could have been used for other purposes were dedicated to fulfilling this promise. She paused. Some of my advisors believe this search has become an unhealthy obsession. Jake felt uncomfortable. Your Majesty, I never asked for any of this. If the debt is causing problems for your people, maybe we should just call it even and move on. Empress Zarathel looked at him with surprise. You would simply release us from our obligations? I was never part of whatever happened 300 years ago. I do not feel right accepting rewards for something my ancestor did. Jake gestured around the opulent chambers. Besides, you have clearly done well for yourselves. Your people are fed, healthy, and prosperous. Maybe that is payment enough for whatever David Morrison did. The Empress stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried strong emotion. Jake Morrison, do you understand what you just offered? I offer to release your empire from an old debt. It seems like the reasonable thing to do. You offered to give up wealth beyond imagination, technology that could transform your civilization, and alliance with the most powerful empire in this region of space. You offered this without asking for anything in return. She shook her head in wonder. You truly are David Morrison's descendant. Jake felt confused by her reaction. I do not understand. 300 years ago, David Morrison could have demanded anything from our empire in exchange for his help. Territory, wealth, political position, anything. Instead, he asked only that we survive and prosper. Now you offer to release us from our debt without accepting payment. The Empress smiled. It confirms everything we believed about your bloodline. She stood and walked to a shelf filled with artifacts. From it, she took a small device that looked like crystallized light. This contains the complete historical record of David Morrison's encounter with our fleet. I would like you to experience it directly. Experience it how? Zephyrian memory technology allows us to record and replay experiences exactly as they occurred. You can see what happened 300 years ago through the eyes of the people who were there. She held out the crystal device. Would you like to know what your ancestor really did? Jake took the device, which felt warm in his hands. How does it work? Simply place it against your forehead and concentrate. The memories will flow naturally. You will see the events as if you were there. Jake hesitated, then pressed the crystal to his head. The world around him dissolved. He was floating in space, but he could breathe and felt no cold. Around him, massive alien ships drifted without power. Their hulls were scorched and cracked, venting atmosphere and debris. The ships looked like dying animals, barely holding together. A small human vessel approached the alien fleet. It was primitive compared to the ships Jake knew, clearly from the early days of human space exploration. The ship's hull bore the name Morrison's Dream and the registration Earth Colony Ship EC 4771. Inside the human ship, Jake could see David Morrison. His ancestor looked remarkably like Jake himself, with the same build and facial features. But David Morrison's expression showed determination and compassion that made him seem larger than life. My God, David Morrison said to his small crew. There must be thousands of people on those ships. They're dying out there. His first officer, a woman named Sarah Chun, checked their instruments. Captain, we do not have enough supplies to help them all. Our colony mission will fail if we use our resources. Then, the colony will have to wait, David Morrison replied without hesitation. We cannot leave these people to die. Jake watched his ancestor coordinate a massive rescue operation. The human ship was tiny compared to the alien vessels, but David Morrison used every resource at his disposal. Food, water, medical supplies, even parts from the ship's own systems. Everything was shared freely with the dying aliens. When Zephyrian children began dying of radiation poisoning, David Morrison personally carried them to his ship's medical bay. He stayed awake for 72 hours straight, caring for alien children whose names he could not pronounce, whose faces he had never seen before. "Why are you doing this?" asked the young Zephyrian, who would later become Empress Tharthel IV. She was barely alive, her small body ravaged by starvation and radiation. "Because you need help," David Morrison replied simply. "That is what people do. We help each other." The memory showed Jake how his ancestor worked tirelessly to repair the alien ship's navigation systems, using human technology that was primitive but functional. When the Zephyrians offered him reward, territory, even marriage into their royal family, David Morrison declined everything. "I do not want payment for doing what is right," he said to the Zephyrian leaders. "Just survive, prosper, build something good with the life you have been given." The memory faded, leaving Jake sitting in the Empress's chambers with tears on his face. Empress Zarathel watched him with understanding. "Now you know," she said softly. "Your ancestor was not just a hero. He was the example of what all intelligent beings should aspire to become." Jake wiped his eyes. He was just doing what he thought was right. Exactly. And that is why his actions were so extraordinary. He had no thought of reward, no expectation of recognition. He simply chose compassion over convenience. The Empress took the memory crystal back. "That is the legacy you carry, Jake Morrison. That is why our empire will always honor your bloodline." A communication device on the Empress's desk chimed softly. She activated it, and Captain Veltar's voice filled the room. "Your Majesty, we are receiving urgent communications from the Imperial Council on the homeworld. Several noble families are requesting emergency sessions to discuss recent developments." Empress Zarathel's expression darkened. "What kind of developments?" "News of your..." Gesture of respect toward Jake Morrison has spread throughout the Empire. Some nobles are questioning the appropriateness of elevating any bloodline above the imperial throne. The Empress looked at Jake with concern. "It appears our political situation is becoming complicated. Some of my nobles fear that honoring your family sets a dangerous precedent." "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we discover whether the debt to David Morrison is strong enough to overcome 3,000 years of imperial tradition." The Empress activated her communication system. "Captain Veltar, prepare my personal shuttle. We are returning to the homeworld immediately." "Your Majesty, what about the human delegation?" "They come with us. It is time for Jake Morrison to see the full scope of the Zephyrian Empire. And it is time for our people to meet the descendant of the greatest hero in our history." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Your Majesty, I am not sure I am ready for that level of..." "Jake Morrison," the Empress interrupted gently. "Ready or not, you are about to become the center of the greatest political crisis the Zephyrian Empire has faced in centuries. But remember what your ancestor taught us. Sometimes doing what is right requires courage, even when the outcome is uncertain." As they prepared to leave for the Zephyrian homeworld, Jake realized that his simple maintenance engineer's life was not just over. It had been completely forgotten. Whatever happened next would determine not only his own fate, but the future relationship between humanity and the most powerful alien civilization in known space. The only question was whether David Morrison's legacy would be strong enough to overcome political forces that had been building for 3,000 years. The journey to the Zephyrian homeworld took 3 days through hyperspace. Jake Morrison spent most of that time learning about the political crisis his existence had created. The noble families of the Zephyrian Empire were ancient bloodlines that had ruled their respective territories for thousands of years. They respected the imperial throne, but jealously guarded their own privileges and traditions. "Think of it like medieval European nobility," Dr. Williams explained during one of their briefing sessions. "They accept the monarch's authority, but expect certain rights and precedents to be maintained. When Empress Zarathel knelt before you, She violated 3 millennia of protocol. Commander Reeves studied the intelligence reports they had received from Zephyrian sources. According to these briefings, at least 6 major noble houses are demanding that the Imperial Council review the Empress's actions. They're not questioning her right to honor your ancestor, but they want formal limitations on how far that honor can extend. Jake felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier each day. What exactly are they afraid of? Lysara, who had become their primary liaison, explained the complex dynamics at play. Some nobles fear that elevating your bloodline above traditional hierarchies could encourage other groups to claim special status. Others worry about economic implications if the Empire grants extensive territorial or resource rights to humanity. But mostly, Captain Veltar added grimly, they fear change. The Zephyrian Empire has been stable for centuries precisely because everyone knows their place in the social order. Your arrival challenges fundamental assumptions about how power and respect are distributed. The Empress had been increasingly tense as they approached the homeworld. She spent long hours in private communication with her advisors and military commanders, trying to gauge support for her policies. When she did meet with the human delegation, her usual confidence seemed strained. Jake Morrison, she said during their final briefing before arrival, I want you to understand what you will see on Zephyria Prime. Our homeworld contains over 15 billion citizens and represents the heart of our civilization. The capital city alone houses 2 billion people. That is larger than the entire human population, Dr. Williams observed. Yes, and every one of those citizens has grown up with stories of David Morrison's heroism. To them, you are a living legend. The Empress paused, but the noble families who oppose our policies also command significant loyalty and resources. The welcome you receive may not be uniform. Jake looked out at the stars, streaming past the ship's windows. Your Majesty, maybe we should reconsider this whole thing. I did not want to cause a civil war in your empire. The potential for civil conflict existed long before you arrived. Empress Zarathel replied. Your presence simply forces us to confront questions we have been avoiding for generations. Is the Zephyrian Empire strong enough to honor its debts, even when doing so requires change? Are we a civilization of principles or merely tradition? The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and Jake got his first look at Zephyria Prime. The planet was beautiful beyond description. 3 moons orbited a world covered in blue oceans and green continents. Cities glowed like jewels across the night side of the planet, connected by streams of light that indicated massive transportation networks. My God, Commander Reeves breathed. How many people live down there? Approximately 40 billion across all continents, Captain Veltar replied. Zephyria Prime has been our homeworld for over 5,000 years. Every significant achievement of our civilization has its roots in this system. As they approached the planet, Jake could see the scale of Zephyrian civilization. Orbital platforms surrounded the world, each one larger than the biggest human space stations. Ships of all sizes moved in carefully controlled patterns, managing trade and transportation for an entire star system. The capital city of Zarathel covered an entire continent. From orbit, it looked like a single massive organism, with transportation arteries flowing like blood vessels through a body. Towers reached into the upper atmosphere, while underground levels extended deep into the planet's crust. The Imperial Palace is located at the city's center, Lysara explained as their ship descended toward the planet's surface. But first, we will land at the ceremonial spaceport, where citizens can welcome Jake Morrison properly. The ceremonial spaceport was larger than most human cities. As their ship settled onto the landing platform, Jake could see crowds gathering beyond security barriers. Hundreds of thousands of Zephyrians had come to catch a glimpse of David Morrison's descendant. They had been arriving for 2 days, Captain Veltar reported. Word spread quickly once news of our departure from the fleet reached the homeworld. Jake felt his stomach tighten with anxiety. What exactly am I supposed to do out there? Simply be yourself, Empress Zarathel advised. These people have waited 3 centuries to thank a member of the Morrison bloodline. Let them see the character that your ancestor passed down to you. The ship's doors opened, and Jake stepped out onto Zephyrian soil for the first time. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth normal, making him feel oddly buoyant. The air was sweet and clean, with a faint floral scent that was completely alien, but pleasant. The crowd's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of voices rose in what could only be described as joyful celebration. Many Zephyrians held signs with human writing that read, "Thank you, Morrison family," and "Welcome home, hero's son." Others carried banners depicting artistic representations of David Morrison's rescue mission. Empress Zarathel led the human delegation down a ceremonial pathway lined with honor guards. The crowd pressed against security barriers, reaching out as if hoping to touch Jake as he passed. Children held flowers while adults wept openly. The emotional intensity was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. "Jake Morrison," voices called out in accented but clear English. "Bless you, son of heroes. We remembered David Morrison. Thank you for saving our people." Dr. Williams leaned close to Jake as they walked. "They have been planning this welcome for generations. These people genuinely see you as family." They reached a raised platform where the Empress would address the crowd. As Jake looked out over the sea of alien faces, he was struck by the genuine love and gratitude in their expressions. These were not subjects performing for their ruler. These were people celebrating something deeply meaningful to their culture. Empress Zarathel stepped to the podium, and the crowd fell silent. When she spoke, her voice was amplified across the entire spaceport. "Citizens of the Empire," she began, "today we welcome Jake Morrison, descendant of David Morrison the Savior, to our homeworld. For 3 centuries, we have searched the galaxy for this moment. Today we can finally begin to repay the debt that defines our civilization's honor." The crowd erupted in celebration again. Jake noticed that some areas of the gathering were less enthusiastic than others, probably supporters of the noble families who opposed the Empress's policies. But the overwhelming majority of citizens showed genuine joy at his arrival. "Jake Morrison," the Empress continued, "will you address our people?" Jake had not prepared for this moment, but he stepped forward to the podium. The crowd quieted, waiting to hear from the descendant of their greatest hero. "People of the Zephyrian Empire," Jake began, his voice carrying across the spaceport, "I am honored by your welcome. I wish my ancestor David Morrison could be here to see the amazing civilization you have built. He would be proud to know that the lives he saved led to such beauty and prosperity." The crowd listened intently. Jake continued, "I want you to know that humans and Zephyrians share the same values. We believe in helping others, in protecting those who cannot protect themselves, and in building a better future for our children. David Morrison saw those qualities in your people 300 years ago, and I see them in all of you today." He paused, looking out over the vast gathering. "The debt you speak of has already been repaid. Your survival, your success, your compassion for others, these are the greatest tributes to my ancestors' memory. Any alliance between our peoples should be built not on ancient obligations, but on shared hope for the future." The crowd's response was thunderous. Even in areas where Jake had noticed less enthusiasm, Zephyrians were applauding and cheering. He had apparently struck exactly the right tone. As they left the spaceport for the Imperial Palace, Lysara seemed pleased with Jake's performance. "That was well said. You addressed the debt issue while emphasizing shared values rather than human superiority. It will make alliance negotiations much easier." The Imperial Palace was a marvel of architecture that seemed to blend organic growth with engineered precision. Towers spiraled into the sky like crystal trees, while courtyards opened onto gardens that defied botanical logic. Every surface was covered in art that told stories of Zephyrian history and achievement. "The palace houses the Imperial Council chambers where your situation will be formally debated," Captain Veltar explained as they toured the complex. "Representatives from every noble house, military commanders, and civilian leaders will participate in the discussions." Jake was assigned quarters in the palace's diplomatic wing. His rooms were spacious and comfortable, with windows that looked out over the capital city. The view was breathtaking, millions of lights stretching to the horizon, connected by transportation networks that moved people and goods in perfect coordination. That evening, Jake attended his first Imperial Council session. The council chamber was enormous, with seating for over 1,000 representatives. The architecture was designed to impress, with a domed ceiling that showed real-time images of the Empire's 12-star systems. The debate that followed was unlike anything in human politics. Zephyrian noble representatives spoke with formal courtesy, but underlying passion about issues that had been building for generations. The translation systems allowed Jake to follow most of the discussion, though some concepts did not translate well into human languages. Lord Admiral Corvain of House Veltheros spoke for the traditionalist faction. Your Imperial Majesty, while we honor the debt to David Morrison, we must consider the implications of elevating any bloodline above established protocols. What precedent does this set for other groups who might claim special status? Duchess Lorena of House Mordeth supported the Empress. Lord Admiral, the Morrison debt is unique in our history. No other bloodline has earned such recognition through pure selfless heroism. To treat this situation as ordinary precedent diminishes the very values our empire claims to represent. The debate continued for hours, touching on everything from military security to economic policy to social stability. Jake listened with growing understanding of how complex the situation had become. His mere existence was forcing the Zephyrian Empire to decide what kind of civilization they wanted to be. Finally, Empress Zarathel called for order. Honorable representatives, we have heard many perspectives tonight. Tomorrow, Jake Morrison will address this council directly. He will explain humanity's position and goals for potential alliance. Then, we will vote on how to proceed. As the session ended, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. Tomorrow, he would stand before the leaders of an interstellar empire and somehow find words that could bridge the gap between human ambitions and Zephyrian political realities. Commander Reeves found him in his quarters later that evening. Morrison, Earth Command has been following our reports with great interest. They want you to know that you have full authority to negotiate preliminary alliance terms. What kind of terms are they looking for? Technology sharing, trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and territorial rights for human expansion. Basically, they want everything the Zephyrians are offering. Commander Reeves paused. But they also want guarantees that humanity will not become a client state or junior partner in this relationship. Jake looked out at the alien city sprawling beyond his windows. Commander, what if the noble families vote against alliance? What if honoring my family's debt would destabilize their entire political system? Then, we find another way forward. Morrison, you're not responsible for solving 3,000 years of Zephyrian political evolution. You are just supposed to represent human interests and help both sides find common ground. That night, Jake lay awake thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 3 days ago, he had been a simple maintenance engineer worried about broken water recyclers. Now he was sleeping in an alien palace, preparing to address the rulers of an interstellar empire and try to negotiate the most important treaty in human history. The irony was not lost on him. David Morrison had helped the Zephyrians because he believed it was the right thing to do. He had never intended to create political crises or interstellar alliances. He had simply seen people in need and decided to help. Jake realized that tomorrow he would have to channel that same simple wisdom. The complex political questions surrounding alliance could be solved by returning to the basic values that had motivated his ancestor 3 centuries ago. Help others. Protect the innocent. Build something good together. The question was whether such simple principles could overcome the complex realities of interstellar politics and 3,000 years of Zephyrian tradition. Tomorrow, Jake Morrison would find out if being David Morrison's descendant was enough to change the course of galactic civilization. Jake Morrison stood before the mirror in his palace quarters, adjusting the formal diplomatic clothes that had been specially tailored for his appearance before the Imperial Council. The fabric was human in style, but made from Zephyrian materials that seemed to shimmer with their own light. Today would determine not only the future of human-Zephyrian relations, but potentially the stability of an entire interstellar empire. Dr. Williams knocked on his door. Ready for this, Jake? As ready as anyone can be to address 1,000 alien politicians about the fate of 2 civilizations. Jake managed a weak smile. Any last-minute advice? Remember what worked at the spaceport yesterday. Speak from the heart about shared values rather than political calculations. These people respect authenticity above clever rhetoric. They made their way to the council chambers through corridors filled with palace staff and minor nobles who had come to witness the historic session. Jake noticed that conversations stopped as he passed, with everyone studying the human who had disrupted their political system simply by existing. The council chamber was packed beyond its normal capacity. Every seat was filled, and additional observers stood along the walls. Representatives from all 12 star systems of the Empire had traveled to the homeworld for this debate. The tension in the room was palpable. Empress Zarathel sat on the elevated Imperial